Well, hi everybody. Welcome back. We had a kind of a little bit longer period, and we're glad to be back. Glad to hopefully everybody's on going to pop in and ask plenty of questions. Hi, Chad. How are you today?
Good. How are we doing?
Good. So another welcome to another episode of Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. Excited. Gosh, so much has happened, but then again, it seems like there hasn't been a whole lot that's happened. I mean, Chad spent some time down there in North Carolina, so that's exciting, and that's such an exciting area anyway. I mean, I've always enjoyed going down there, and it's just a neat place and kind of the racing capital of the world in a sense. And people don't think that there's a lot of dirt racing down there, but there's actually a lot of dirt racing down there.
Yeah, we went to the World Short Track Championships there at Charlotte the week before the World Finals, and really, I think next year we're probably going to do the whole 8 or 9 day swing and do both of them. We just couldn't quite handle it this year, but the week before that is the short trackers, the Saturday night guys, and it's like a Super Nationals. It's like a Boone Super Nationals. There was 500 and I think 520-ish cars. They unfortunately had a weather for like 4 days before that. The track got so wet they had a hard time drying it out, so everything kind of got pushed back a little bit. But they got it in and did a great job trying to accommodate the surface, and so it was a good time. We had a good trip. We seen a lot of people, met a lot of new people. We're trying to work on the southeast there and grow our brand down there and unfortunately, it's a long ways from Bangor, Wisconsin. But and I got down there and I was expecting warm weather and it was just like home, so it was a little chilly, but it was a good trip. So yeah, we had a good time.
Hmm. Um, Eric wants to know if there's going to be any Black Friday deals, and we actually are not going to do a Black Friday deal this year. We're going to do a Cyber Monday deal, which is actually going to be shock absorbers. And we're going to have a 10% discount on all shock absorbers that are purchased on that Monday, which would be, oh, actually, that would be December 1st. And so we're not going to do a Black Friday deal. We're not open on that Friday anyway, so it's a little hard to really accommodate customers and answer phone calls and stuff when there's nobody there. That is actually the day that we make up to our employees for them sacrificing working Labor Day at the Super Nationals. So that's the day that they get to call a holiday, and then they get a 4 day weekend and spend with their family and do the Thanksgiving stuff and go to the IMCA banquet or whatever else they want to do on that extended weekend. So we've done that for quite a while and it seems to work pretty good. The employees seem to like it a lot. So um, I think it's a pretty cool deal. And there's very few people even open on that Friday anymore. I mean, other than your retail stores.
Yeah, I'll have to go to Colby and see what we're gonna do. I guess we haven't really talked about it yet. I don't remember what we did last year. If we had a percentage off or something, but I'm sure we'll dream something up for our stuff for that weekend too. So
Yeah.
stay tuned.
So, but no, I think since we talked, we raced at Marshalltown. I don't know what they actually call that fall festival deal. It was a shiver fest. I froze my ass off for 3 days. And I mean, froze my ass off for 3 days. And of course, you know, due to my years of experience, somehow or another, the more years of experience I get, the less I like the cold. And so I kind of was dressed up like the abominable snowman. And normally I used to be pretty concerned about image and how I looked, but I really didn't give a damn. I was so freaking cold. I could have cared less, man. But luckily, my old buddy Mike Kennedy, he had his heater on in his trailer, And of course, McBurney had a heater on his trailer, and Cam Reimers had a heater on in his trailer. So I just kind of went from trailer to trailer to trailer, and whoever had a heater, that's where we went.
That's awesome.
Sold Cam Reimers' car, so Cam's going to be in a brand new 26 car next year. New, all new design car, so that's exciting. Well, it'd be actually like the one we had at the Super Nationals. That was a prototype for 26. So that's exciting. And McBurney's, car, new car's got 5 nights on it, and the car's been awesome from the get go, and so that's been pretty cool. And of course, the old BHE Icon stock car, we've had pretty good luck with that. We didn't end up with wins, but we had a couple seconds, and the car ran well. So I'm pretty excited going into the season. So now I've been working on schools. Uh, that working on the book and just kind of going through the different chassis schools. And of course, we have the chassis school, the sport mod, or the 2-link school. It's the first one, and then the 4-link school. And then we'll follow it up after the Daytona 500 with the stock car school. And then the first week in March, we go to Pennsylvania and get to hang out with Joel for a couple of days. So that's always exciting. Thank God I'm not flying anywhere.
Yeah, I think they got it fixed today finally. So
Yeah, they were talking on the news that it's going to take quite a while to get the airline stuff fixed back to running smoothly as it was, but at least there's hope, or it looks good. So anyway, Jason, what's the advantage or disadvantage to lead the right front wheel forward of the left front in an IMCA mod? Um, Everybody kind of has an opinion on that, and what we've actually done is we tend to lead, and I know there's some other chassis builders. We tend to lead. Our stub is actually offset 5/8 of an inch, and it's half on the right and half on the left, so it ends up being basically the right side is 5/8 of an inch further forward. To me, since that's kind of the corner that hits the corner first, that's the corner of the car that hits the corner of the first. I like to get it out there so that it has a little bit more load. In my opinion, I think the car rotates a little better. But then again, there's some chassis builders that build their cars square, and they do a good job too. So I don't know if there is a major advantage anymore. I think there used to be, in my opinion, but I can't say. We still build our car that way, uh, so I can't say that it's a big advantage. But I don't see the disadvantage in it. I think the car, like I said, it just likes to turn, rotate. I feel it rotates better and it turns down. If when you want to turn down into the corner, I think it turns down more responsive with that right front wheel kind of leading everything. What's your opinion, Chad? Have you got an opinion on that?
yeah, I'm kind of backwards on that one. I mean, the asphalt cars are forward on the left front to turn. Um, I don't know. I think it's hard to say. The dirt cars are so much different, whether or not that right front works the opposite of the asphalt car or not. I know you're in backsteer, a lot of variables there. But you've built a lot more race cars than I have for the dirt, and I just know that asphalt cars, the left front is led to make the car turn in, but because they're going left, that left front tire gets there first. If that gets there first and starts turning first, it pulls the car around the corner. Well, when you're on the dirt car and you go into back steer and then the right front is leading, so then it would be the opposite effect as the asphalt car. So it's probably right, but it just growing up in asphalt, it seems backwards to me, but it's probably right for the dirt car.
Um, Steve's watching. That's good. Joey. So how's it going, Joey? I see that driver of yours won a couple races here lately, and I've seen some posts about some Ken Schrader stuff, so that's exciting. I follow what he does all the time. Uh, my all-time favorite driver, so I keep track of what the old man's doing. Um, what's your opinion? I've heard both ways. For more side bite on a three-link modified on sliders, soften or stiffen right rear spring on a harder tire. Well, I would definitely stiffen the spring. Softening the spring, in my opinion, will take side bite out of the car. It will, however, if you can get through the side bite issue, it will give you more drive off the corner with a softer spring because it's not riding that right rear as much coming off the corner. But as a rule of thumb on a two-link car, of course, everybody's all over the board on that left rear, but a normal two-link car, we're usually in that 225 range. I don't like going a whole lot stiffer than that. I once in a while we'll run a 250, but it's rare. But that's of course with the IMCA tire, which is a fairly harder tire. Back in the day when we used to run a 200, I mean the 200 was good. It just seemed like we'd have to rely on the Panhard bar a little bit more to try to get a little more side bite. Well, then what would happen is then we would get more side bite, but then the car would want to try to lay over there. And so with a stiffer spring, the car doesn't try to lay on the right rear. So in my opinion, if it's not laying on the right rear, it's going to have more traction up off the corner because it's not getting off of the left rear. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, I would agree. I'd be the guy that would automatically go to the spring table also. I like a stiffer right rear spring with the lower spring table to get the motion. So I kind of balance those two out as my favorite approach to it is lowering the right rear spring table down and adding rate to the spring to drive the tire into the track. If you get the mechanical roll, then use the rate to drive the tire into the track. But I mean, there
Sure.
definitely is a point where you can get too stiff on the spring and lose all your exit traction also. So that's kind of a balancing act between all that stuff.
Well, and the spring table is another thing that we talk about it a lot, and it's very important. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of our opinions on that. We got plenty of time, lots of time for some questions. If there's some questions out there, hopefully not everybody's watching the football game tonight.
Green Bay football Packers.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, we're thrashing here. We're coming into trade show season, so we're excited about that. We got the 2026 catalog done, which has 9 pages of new products. So we have a lot of things going on, a lot of new stuff we're excited about, and prepping for shows. Billy goes to the Syracuse, New York, the Northeast Racing Show in Syracuse, New York, on the 21st and 22nd, and then we go December 4, 5, 6 to the Dome at St. Louis for the indoor, and then a few of us are going right from St. Louis right to Indianapolis to PRI. So we're going back to PRI. Excited about that. Not really overly excited about being gone for 13 days again, but like my dad said, you made your bed, you got to sleep in it. So
Yeah,
uh,
there you go.
we're excited. We're working on the displays here. The showroom is absolutely destroyed here, so we're working on redoing the trade show displays that haven't worked in Indianapolis for a few years. So, but we're excited.
Good. Well, that sounds like a really good deal. We really don't actually have anything coming up. Um, just man, been busy. I mean, back to building race cars, which is once again I said I'd never do that, and sometimes I scratch my head and wonder why I decided I was going to do that. But it was just an inevitable deal. We needed things to um, keep everybody busy and keep going. And so, all right. Camden, longer trailing arm versus shorter trailing arm. Pros and cons of both. Well, the shorter trailing arm will give you quicker action, but not last as long. The longer will be a little slower action, a little smoother reaction time, and last longer. That's the biggest difference, and that's kind of why, like on our stuff, and we can with the IMCA deal, you got to have they've got a 16-inch rule, and on that particular deal, we run a 17 left rear because then we can actually run more angle in it, and it gives us more traction, but it's not severe traction. It doesn't get that center of the corner tightness that you can sometimes get with a shorter trailing arm. It can just respond too quickly. What's your thoughts on that, Chad?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. The longer trailing arms, especially the left rear, where we're trying to control the motion there. So you're going to a longer bar because you're getting so much more drop these days, and you're trying to get the spoiler in the air. So longer arms on the left rear to slow that left rear motion down a little bit and not make the roll steer so drastic has been a pretty popular thing lately.
Well, and with the tire that we have, you gotta make sure you don't scrub traction with that thing, and so sometimes quicker, and I think there would be times where that 16 certain racetracks, some kind of a stop and go type deal, or someplace where you really pivot quickly, um, might have some merit to it, but most overall, I like the longer one. Sean, on the Weir's birdcage, what's the bubble level used for?
So that's so you can tell what your index is. So we put it in there just for a quick reference. If you make a bar change at the racetrack, you can look at where the bubble level is, make your bar change, and if you have to adjust the index of the cage, you can do it off that bubble level. The cage plates are square on both the front and back and the bottom edge, so it is just as easy to put a magnetic digital angle finder on them plates and reference that back to whatever if you make a bar change and you got 10 degrees of index, you put it back to 10 degrees of index. So we've had discussions about taking the bubble level out. They are vulnerable, they get broken once in a while, and it is so easy with the digital magnetic angle finders these days. Is it really necessary? But we keep it in there just because it was cool.
Adam wants to know when the catalog is going to hit the mailboxes.
Well, that is a good question. We're supposed to have them at the dome, so I would say that they should go in the mail probably right around that time, first part of December. As soon as we get the catalogs here, then they keep the rest, and then they ship them out of the people that print the catalog mail them for us. So once Colby gets the mailing list updated and fired over there, and we get the ones that come here to the trade shows and in the orders here, then we pay the government a big check and mail them all over the country. So.
Well, it's nice of you to support that government industry there, Chad. Keep the postal workers working.
Man, we keep having discussions about getting rid of the catalog, and it's I think last year cost us over $20,000 to mail them catalogs out. But everybody, I polled the people, and the people love to have it in their hands, and I guess we're just going to keep rocking the catalog. It's 108 pages, so
Yeah,
it's pretty.
I, yeah, I don't think I'd go away from the catalog. I mean, there's still a lot of old school people like me that like to just look at pictures,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
the websites are cool, but sometimes navigating them can be a little bit of a challenge for those people that aren't on it. Now you take the generation of all my employees, I mean, they wouldn't think of looking at a catalog because they just punch it in and look it up, and they have the information before I can turn a page. But they didn't have as much fun as I was having to turn that page.
Amen.
Um, Theron, about how much angle is good for the right rear bottom bar on an IMCA modified when it's on the bars? Uh, Actually, the right rear bar when the car's up on the bars would probably be about 5 degrees negative. Um, that's what my guess would be. Do you have any actual knowledge of what
I
that is?
haven't I haven't looked at that dynamically in a while. I'm not
I
100%.
haven't either. Yeah, and I'm working on the simulators for the school, and once I get that stuff all, and I could actually mimic that and find that out. But I'm pretty sure when I tested it before, it seemed to me like it went about a -5 degrees because I like to have it set up so that it starts around 1 to 2 degrees of angle in it, and then it goes negative about 5. Jason, maybe you guys can settle an argument for me. Oh, great. In your opinion, what is a good dynamic droop number for a stock car, and how much steer is too much or not enough? Well, first of all, your dynamic droop number kind of has to be regulated if you're running IMCA with their ride height rule and then their shaft, and how much shock is actually showing. But from what I remember, and of course, I'm not as much of a stock car expert as a couple of my employees are, but I was thinking 5 inches was a number that I had heard, but don't quote me on that because I actually, I'd have to ask Braden or Troy on that one. Yeah, well, you got to come back to some, or no, you were already back when we got this nice weather.
No, yeah, I was back. Yeah.
Snow, gosh.
Did you get any snow?
Yep, we got probably here at my house. I would say it was probably half inch, maybe. I mean, it's just enough to make everything white. We didn't get a lot. I was fortunate. There's other areas in Iowa that got 3, 4, 5 inches. We're lucky we didn't get that. Just enough to make everything nice and cold. Sunday was pretty chilly. I kind of hung around the house and done all that domestic stuff that you have to do when you don't have anybody helping you do it. And the dog's not much good at that stuff. He just follows me around. Um, Dustin, talking about school, your online seminar, is it geared towards general knowledge or does it dip into some advanced stuff? Thank you, guys. Um, it's we kind of have to gear it a little of both. There's a lot of general stuff in there, but depending on the actual questions and depending on what like the shock stuff is pretty extensive. Rear suspension stuff's pretty extensive, and we go through that pretty much, talking about Panhard bars and pull bars and that type of stuff. What would you say, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good balance. I mean, obviously you have to, that's what we talk about all the time. Like, does a AMOD 4-lane class need to have caster camber in it? I mean, by that time in your career, you should know how to do that. But we do go over a lot of that basic stuff. There's little things you can learn there. We do a lot of dynamic stuff that I don't think people look at. Yeah, I think there's a lot of general how to keep your car functioning properly maintenance. but then there's also a lot of little tricks that all of us have learned over our years that we slide in there that I think makes it a more advanced class.
Well, 3 years ago, I had a guy after the class. He emailed me and said that he felt that the class was a little too entry level for him, and but he enjoyed it, but he was hoping to get more specific stuff. Now, as I asked him what specific stuff that he needed, because I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that he had, he really didn't have anything. Then lo and behold, about November that following year, he emailed me back and said it was the best year he's ever had racing, and thanks for the school because he learned so much at the school. And he said the thing of it was he had forgot about the basic stuff. He'd forgot about a lot of the maintenance stuff, and he just quit doing that stuff and started doing a lot of that stuff that we talk about, and had the best year of racing that he's ever had. So, you kind of get out of it what you want to get out of it, but we cover a lot of stuff. Chad, can you give me an update or a refresher on your app?
So yeah, we have two different versions now. We have the lightweight one, which is just the tuning. So the Circle Track tuning app is the less expensive one, and it just gives you the how to tune your car. So you can punch in, I have a stock car and I'm loose in, and it'll give you the list of changes to think about. And the big one, the big app lets you put all your setup information in, all your maintenance in there. You can put multiple race cars in there, every measurement on your car, all your parts list, your maintenance schedule. It's just a massive, I think there's 85 pages of intel in there that you can fill up or not fill up. I mean, you can use it to its whole extent, or you can use just simple parts of it. Race day notes. You do get the race day notes with the tuning app also. So, two different versions. It's kind of based on how in depth you want to get into it. We had a lot of people talk about that it's just more work to put the data into the app. Well, there's really nothing you can do about that. You're either going to write it in a notebook or type it into your phone or your tablet. So it's kind of based on how you want to do it and how involved you want to get with it. So
Um, yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, it's kind of like everything. I mean, it takes time, period. I mean, and so you kind of you have that information, and if you can log it in there, it's information that's saved. So it just kind of depends on what method works best for you.
we missed
Uh,
Sean there when I went. It went down a few, and Sean Marquez.
oh, what's a good number of index on the left rear at full droop? Is the right rear set at zero at ride height?
Yeah, I would say the right rear is generally, it kind of varies on how you want that right rear to feel on entry. Some guys are starting it unindexed because they like to fall and feel free. And a lot of guys are starting zero, and some are starting 1 or 2 degrees into the spring. So the right rear is kind of tuned based on how you like to drive into the corner. I'd say the majority of the cars are starting at 0 to 1 into the spring on the right rear. The left rear is probably going to be about 3 to 5 degrees into the spring, depending on if you're running zero index or what if it's standard. A lot of that end variable ends on the how you have your bars located. So, but at droop, you're going to still index 15 to 20 degrees, depending on how much dropout you have. So I know they called it zero index, named it wrong. We just took it from whoever named it. I should have renamed that, like I tried to rename the bird cage to a suspension cage, but it didn't work on the suspension cage, so I didn't rename zero index because when it's indexed, it's not zero. It's still 20 degrees into the spring. Um, so yeah, that's what that should be.
Okay. Justin, I agree with Chad. There's always something you're going to pick up. I can't make it over from Montana, so I'll do the online for my sport mod. Well, the online class, I mean, it's the same. I mean, it's a live class, Like I said, the um, works really well. You get the same book. Everything's the same. If you're going to take the online class, I'd actually recommend registering like a week earlier, because that way then they have time to box up a notebook and send it to you so that you have it in time. What happens is if we register 2 to 3 days ahead of time, then we almost have to send you a PDF so you can print it out yourself rather than sending you the actual workbook that the class itself gets. So, Justin, if you're thinking about taking it, I would register a little early, and then they can get you up to speed quicker. Jamie, on a stock car, what is your opinion on optimum ride height in the front end? How low is too low? Well, once again, you gotta, if you're running IMCA, you've gotta follow, and I'm sure USRA has specific ride height rules to keep it so that I would run it as low as I possibly could run. I like running, the old car, like when you look at these cars, especially if you look at a modified, the old car's tipped over on the right front, and that's for a reason, because when you already, it's like if you're building a teeter totter, or you're building, say, a table with legs on it. If one leg is shorter, it's a lot easier to tip it that way. So now all of a sudden, if we're leaning to right front, it's a lot easier to get over there on the right front. But I can't give you a specific height because I'm not as familiar with those ride heights. But I would run it as low as I could and still make sure that I was legal when they measure everything to make sure. One of the things that I did notice that people would get dinged a little bit at Super Nationals was their actual nose. When they run the ride height low, they forget to trim the nose up, and the nose has a specific measurement that those guys would get docked 2 spots for because the height of the nose was illegal. So anytime you make a change, keep in mind there's always more than one change that it's going to probably affect. And so, make sure you think through everything that you're actually going to do so that there's no guess. You win a heat race at the Super Nationals and end up getting third. That would suck. Yeah, Justin, I agree. Races are won in the shop. I mean, you gotta be prepared when you unload. You need to unload, go to the concession stand, talk to your buddies, do whatever. You don't need to be working on your car because you should have your car done. And it should all been done by Thursday night, so you don't have to thrash. If you're racing Friday night, you don't have to thrash half the day Friday to get your car done when you get off work, and then still finishing it at the racetrack. That's just one of my personal pet peeves that I never have understood how somebody could take their race car to the racetrack and finish working on it at the racetrack when it's not in a level surface or whatever. But anyway, I agree with you, Justin. It's that maintenance and all that stuff. We spend quite a bit of time on it. That's kind of, but that's where races are won. Speed is definitely a good thing, but finishes are what actually you record. I don't care if you're the fastest car in 19 laps, you got to be the fastest car or the first car to the finish line on lap 20 or whatever length it is. Bob, on the turn stub, because of extra dynamic steer, what do you think if opened up to an inch? Well, believe it or not, we've tried some of those things, and it seems like anytime I've ever tried anything that was too far, 3/4 of an inch is what we used to actually go with, and then we cut back to 5/8. We tried a car that was actually like an inch and a half, and that thing was miserable. It was unpredictable. It was not consistent. It was very dependent on how the driver entered the corner, on how that tire loaded, and then transferred the load back to everything else. So it was just too much. So we backed it off to that 5/8, and that seems to be, where they're fairly comfortable. Um, Taylor, do you ever play with more or less camber caster from the heat to the main modified? Actually, no. On dirt, I really don't. We kind of set everything up for the main event. Most generally, you've got plenty of traction in the heat race. The front end's going to have plenty of traction. So if it's, if the camber is not exactly perfect for that condition, I don't know if the car would know that it wasn't. Where when it gets dry slick, that's where it's so important to make sure you get the full usage of that tire. When you're on a racetrack that's got a little more grip, there's more sidewall flex, and there's just more stuff going on to the point where I don't mess with that stuff at the racetrack. I mean, unless there's something that's really a problem. Now, pavement stuff, I mean, that was something that, well, when we ran the pavement stuff, that was kind of a common thing when we would go test. That's one of the things that we would test with. But with the dirt car, not a whole lot. We mess with anti-dive more so than we do anything else, because if the guy's complaining about it's just not getting over in the right front, we actually work with the slugs and change the anti-dive to get the car over on the right front better. Or if it's getting on the right front too much, take a little bit out of it. That's probably the only real front end setting that I will mess with at the racetrack. Matt, on a Midwest Modified, what's the best wheelbase to have? We have a 108 minimum, but just was wondering if a longer wheelbase is better or if shorter is better. A lot of it has to do with the driver. A lot of it has to do with the actual racetrack itself. A longer wheelbase car is more drivable. It's less responsive, but it's more drivable. The shorter wheelbase car is going to be quicker to respond. Sometimes you can get in over your head and it responds too quick. But once again, I lean towards the shorter wheelbase just because our engine setback, like on a modified, uh, is set from the like 72 inches from the motor plate to the center of the rear end. So if we lengthen that out, now we're taking weight off the front end, and I'm not sure moving that motor back is always that great of an idea. Um, so that's my opinion. What's your thoughts on that, Chad?
I agree. The shorter wheelbase is going to turn better, and the longer wheelbase is going to have traction.
Yeah, that's very true. Jamie, I'm a USR car. We can go down to 5 inches. If that's what the rule is, that's where I'd be. Get that nose out of the air. I mean, aerodynamics. People don't think enough about that. Plus the fact, your A-frame angles, your gains are going to change a little bit because you're going to have a little better A-frame angle than if the car is higher. I just like to run the lower ride heights. I just think the car responds better.
I think we missed the wheelbase portion of that one stock car question.
Okay.
Where was that? The droop, and then how much is too much or not enough steer. We got to the droop, but then we didn't do the steer.
Oh, whoops.
I don't know if you have a steer measurement for the stock cars.
Actually, I don't. Once again, I'm pretty confident my two stock car guys probably do, but I know what the modified and the sport mod need to be, but I just haven't worked on the stock car side of things as much as what I'd like to. But I'll probably get the opportunity to do a little more of that this year. I still kind of like, some of those races. IMCA TV, man, those guys just do a great job. I just, yeah, I'm kind of a weather,
Fair
fair
weather.
weather guy. Chris, IMCA stock car right front lower ball joint is a half inch forward of the left front. What will that do to the car for tuning? It's kind of like the conversation we talked about with the front end being having lead, or in other words, having the right front moved further ahead. Um, I think it just helps the car drive a little bit better on dirt because, of course, when you're back steering, I think having that load on that right front gets the load on the right front a little sooner. I mean, it's instance, but that's just my opinion. Um, I just like the way the cars drive with that right front being slightly ahead of the left front. Now some of the How cars that we had, this is we're talking like really back in the day, but they were kind of built more off of that asphalt theory with the right front being back and dirt wise, um, that they struggle to be tight in the middle of the corner.
So the wheelbase is more important than the stub location, probably.
In my opinion, it is, yeah. Because what we would have to do on those cars, we would have to put trail in the right rear to help them turn. The downside to that was then they were a little free off because of the trail. And then we got our first Rayburn car, and that had 7/8 of an inch. The front end, the right front was 7/8 of an inch further ahead. And so those cars just drove so nice. And then when we started building our late model stuff, we kind of patterned it more off of CJ's theory. Um, so you've been doing any? Well, you haven't been home enough to do any hunting. Has the boys
I've,
been doing some hunting?
I've been hunting every day since I've been home.
Oh,
So
yeah. Okay.
yeah, we're playing a chess game with whitetails right now.
Ah, awesome.
They're chasing girls. There's all over the place. So we're struggling,
Mm,
is what I'm trying to say.
I see. Yeah. Well, that female thing.
It's still fun to sit out there and look at the trees.
Oh, sure.
I had good action tonight. I went tonight before I came on here, so
Awesome.
yeah. I was trapped in the blind, so I thought I was gonna have to have somebody come and scare the deer away so I could make it to the show. But sure enough, a couple bucks came in and started chasing the does around, and I got out of there. So
Awesome. Well, that sounds fun. Joe wants to know when using the load stick on the right front, should we be trying to keep the right front off of the bump stop?
what I guess I'm confused. What bump stop? If you have the load stick in where the shock is, are you talking the bump stop on like the lower control arm, or might have to elaborate a little bit? Like tell me what we're doing there. If you have the load stick on and the shock on with the bump stop on the shock, then you're using the bump stop as your total load. If you're talking about bottoming the control arm out, then obviously you'd stop the stick right before the bottom out point, and that would be your down number. So, but a lot of guys do have the cars built where they can, if they're a bump stop car and they can have bump stops on the shock, then they'll build another mount for the load stick and have the load stick next door and be
Sure.
a combo, having both the numbers in the equation, keeping in mind that is just a reference. You're not going to be able to reference that versus any other car because it's such a special instance. But the load sticks are very cool. We're excited to announce that those are going to be uh, pretty cool here in a month. We got a big announcement that we're working on for those. So
Oh God, I hate this. I'll have to wait another month.
yeah, sorry.
Jeez,
We're
that's
saving
like
that.
Christmas, man.
We're saving that one for.
Awesome.
I think we're unveiling that one at the Dome. So
Ah,
pretty
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
Jeffrey says when you use the long wheelbase, you move the motor back. It's almost impossible to keep the front end pinned, which is you move that motor back 2 more inches. I mean, that's taking a lot of weight off that front end, and it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle. But like Chad said, boy, you have more traction. That long wheelbase car, because of course, once again, you got less weight on the front wheels, so you got more weight on the rear wheels, and it just seems to work that way. But I always felt that, when we originally built our original car, it was 109.5 inch wheelbase, and those cars worked really well. Then when we went to the 108, we actually struggled a little bit because the cars were just very sensitive. But once we learned how to tune them, they drove so much better because they were just quicker to react to everything. And so it was just
I
a
think to
different situation.
I think to quote my brother, we had a 108 car and then we built a 110 car, and he's like, "This thing's like driving a station wagon."
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, there's some builders that are building longer wheelbase stuff, and their stuff runs good. So I'm not saying it's out of line, but you definitely have to soften the front springs up. And then the problem is you soften the front springs up to get the motion, but then you take load off the tire because you soften the spring up. So I mean, it's kind of a catch-22 deal. Um, Cody wants to know what brake pads are you using on the new stock car? Um, well, I know that the new stock car that we ran has AFCO pads in it. What the actual numbers are, yeah, I might not know much about that. I will definitely have to find that out. Uh, I think they're pretty aggressive in the rear, and I still think they're aggressive in the left front with a medium, lighter right front, because that's normally what we do. So I'm pretty sure that's probably what that car's got. But brand wise, that car's got AFCO pads in it. Mark, Freelink, spring on top of the housing sits high on the left rear. 150 left rear, 225 right rear. No load on the left rear. Spring, no load on the left rear when the spring is on the chain. Um, well, I mean, that's okay. I mean, as long as it's not coming off the left rear, I mean, that's okay. I wouldn't be thrilled if it's, I don't know. I still like a little bit of load. I mean,
I,
I don't know. I still like to have about a minimum of a half an inch of load on a spring, just for the fact that, you just never know how everything's going to turn out back there. And it seems like when you take no load it might get to a point where it might be free for a minute, and that's a dead spot. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, I'd probably just put a softer, taller spring in. I don't know how tall the spring is, but might need to go to a 125 or a 100 to get. You'll have load in it then.
Yeah, no doubt. Kyle says, I got a young rookie watching now. Can you explain pro dive and anti dive in a more simple form than I can? Oh well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, basically, pro dive. I'm not a big fan of pro dive. I know some people do it, especially on the left front. Um, I run anti-dive in everything. I don't run as much anti-dive in the left front as I do in the right front. But what it does, there's a point where when the car goes into the corner, you got to remember when it gets on the brakes, a lot of anti-dive where those two, the upper and lower control arm are now at different angles. So when it gets up on the brake, when you get up on the brakes or you apply the brake, it actually forces them to become somewhat solid, which they're never solid, but they're kind of fighting each other to the point where you actually can run a softer spring and not let the car fall on the left front or on the right front near as much. So that being said, the advantage of going to more anti-dive just gets you a softer spring so that it doesn't dive on the front end when it gets into the corner, but when it gets to the middle of the corner, now it lets the car fall further on the right front after you unapply the brakes. And then the advantage of more load on the right front in turn transfers load to the right rear, which gives you side bite and just makes the car faster. How about you explain it, Chad?
I think you did good. The so just to so you understand, like the when we say anti-dive, that means the front of the control arm is higher than the back of the control arm. If it's pro dive, the rear of the control arm is higher than the front of the control arm. So the more angle in the front, the more angle up in the front, the more anti dive it's going to be. And as far as you explain that perfectly with the braking and how it's just a split second deal where it stiffens that suspension and allows you to run a softer spring to get that motion. So, but there is a lot of times where you're gonna have to get on the brakes hard in certain situations, and the not having enough anti-dive in there could be if you're running pro dive is going to be bad. So again, I think for the most part, I'd stick with the anti-dive and not pro dive. Some guys do play the left front deal where they get a little on there to make it slam that left front when they lift, um, but I think that pretty much narrows it down there.
And the other thing, keep in mind, the anti-dive or pro dive really has no impact on the car if you're not using the brakes.
Correct.
So if your driver uses very little brake, he's not going to know the difference whether you've got 3 degrees anti-dive or you got 8 degrees anti-dive in that right front. He will not know, and the car will not know. But once he applies the brakes, holy moly, there is a major difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can take a car that's, say, slamming the right front into the dirt and put 2 degrees more anti-dive in it and take that slamming down to the point where it keeps it from slamming and driving the frame into the dirt. And all it does is get the car into the corner further before it falls on that right front. It's a unique adjustment. And once again, it's an adjustment that just because Joe's got 6 degrees doesn't mean you need 6 degrees. It's your driving style and how you apply the brakes. Um, so, Kyle, I hope we explained that fairly clear. Ty, what's your go-to adjustment to loosen entry into the corner to the apex on an IMCA sport mod? what's your go-to without changing wheelbase, stagger, or trail? Is it Panhard bar down on both sides, or take load out of the left rear, or some other change of combo of changes? Um, Actually, in that situation where you're talking about the things that you're talking about, if I need to loosen the car up getting into the corner and through the middle of the corner, I'll actually increase the angle of my right rear trailing arm because that puts a little bit more steer in it. Now, I didn't affect stagger, I didn't affect wheelbase, I didn't affect trail. All I did was change it so that it has a little bit more trail in it as it rolls over. So it makes the car rotate the corner a lot better. It's not going to really affect you coming off a whole lot because once you're exiting the corner, the car's kind of basically up on the bars and it shouldn't be laying over on the right rear. If it affects it, the car's laying over on the right rear and you got too soft a right rear spring. But that's my go-to on a sport mod. The right rear trailing arm, I mess with that a lot. I never change the left rear. If I need to free the car up, I put more angle in the right rear, and that seems to make a big difference. Well, we've got 3 more minutes. Um, I changed my calendar this weekend, so I got to look up and down to see where November went to. Our next show would be the 24th. Is that going to work for you?
Yep, I'm home. I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, our next show will be the 24th. Like I said, we still got time for a couple more questions. Um, we got the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, which is one of my favorite holidays. You get to eat a lot of food and not really do much of anything else. Watch everybody look through the newspaper to see where the Black Friday ads are going to be. And of course, I'm not one of those people who have a tremendous amount of patience and not really super big on getting up really early in the morning. So going Black Friday shopping, which means massive amounts of people, nah, I don't really think that's something that I probably would do. But my female sides of my family, that's like a national event. I mean, they plan for that deal. And some of my granddaughters finally got to the point where the rule was to be able to go with mom and aunt, they had to be 10 years old. And finally, the youngest one of the middle family, my granddaughter Aubrey, she turned 10, so she gets to go this year. So that's a big deal. Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah, I'll just wait and see what they did. Anyway, using a Panhard bar behind the rear end differential, what would be the best angle to start stock car? Um, well, I really like, if at all possible, I like to leave that Panhard bar to the point where it's 7 to 10 degrees, and I myself would rather raise or lower the whole Panhard bar rather than changing the degree. The problem you run into, and it's a pro and a con, when you put more angle, it sticks the right rear harder. The only thing is, anytime something has more angle in it, it's going to react more severely. So sometimes we go in, we stick the right rear hard, and then all of a sudden it'll snap that tire loose because it's so severe on that right rear that it breaks traction. So I'm not a big believer in that. I would never run more than 12 degrees of angle in that rear panhard bar. That would be absolutely the most. Um, Holy moly, we got questions. Okay. Steve, IMCA Sport Mod. When, whoops. When talking over rear steer at dynamic, is that the same as wheelbase changing left rear shortened plus its lengthening? Uh, I think if I'm reading that right, that would be true.
Correct.
What's a good total wheelbase number? On a sport mod, I don't like more than 2.5 inches of change. Seems to me like those cars, if they get more than 2.5 inches of change, they're a little free in the middle, and then the driver will, have to naturally try to correct that the best he can, which he's going to have to get off the throttle a little bit, and it's going to kill corner exit speed. So you got to be a little careful there. And on a real dry slick racetrack, we might even cut that back a little bit, but not a lot. I still believe it's still coffee cup theory. I mean, we're racing on a racetrack that's got banking and it's got a corner, and so we want the car to naturally roll the corners so that the driver doesn't have to do anything more than what he really needs to do, and the car would be faster if that is the case. Checking and setting bump steer. That's a project. Um, Checking bump steer, of course, you would need to have a bump steer gauge. You need to put your car at right height and block the car up with, and take the springs out of it so that you can raise and lower it. And then you basically take your bump steer gauge and you go up and down. Now, depending on, if you've got like a modified where you can change the outer tie rod location, that's how you would set bump steer. On a stock car or yeah, like on a stock car or something like that, you can kind of offset the holes, make the holes a little bigger in the frame, and tip the idler arm down a little bit. But legally, you're not supposed to do anything to it. But when you can't adjust it on the spindle, that's really the only way you can really adjust it um, legally. Is the old adage: you put in a 3/8 bolt in a half-inch hole, you've got plenty of clearance there. So that's an option to help with that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't have a gauge, you can just if you have toe plates, you can put your toe plates on there and have your buddies push the car down dynamically and look at it just at ride height, and then push the car all the way down and look at the toe plates dynamically. If you don't have a fancy gauge, you can do it with your toe plates also. That's a quick way of doing it.
Um, okay. Dorothy, might be a question for your stock car guys, Bad Fast Braden and Troy, the Terrorizer. That is a good name for Troy.
Yeah, that's gonna stick.
That one's going to stick. I can't wait for tomorrow. With pin ends, the front end down nowadays on the stock car is trend to reduce positive caster. My notebook always positive 6 degrees on the caster, positive 3 to 4 on the left. Um, that's probably about right. I think I was thinking we were 2 to 3 on the left and 5 on the right front. Maybe those guys are going a little bit more. I mean, you're still in that window where I don't think it's too bad. Keep in mind, the bump steer on a stock vehicle is terrible. If we put more caster in it, we're going to make the bump steer worse because we're going to raise that we're going to raise that spindle arm up. So once again, we're helping it in one way, but we're hurting it in another way. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that stuff. Jesse, IMCA California AMOD is close to UMP AMOD. Oh, okay. Dave, Chad got on here late today, but is there a date for the Minnesota Expo? Yes.
Yep, Saturday, March 14th, 9 to 4, Mayo Civic Center, downtown Rochester. It's going to be a good show. We got new companies already signing up, and we're super excited to get a whole group there. Hopefully, we'll have just as many as we had last year.
Awesome. All righty. Well, we went past our time. It was nice being able to visit with all you guys. A lot of great questions tonight, great input, and like your comments. And we will see you again in 2 weeks, November 24th. See
Awesome.
you, Chad. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks, everybody.